Hello, everyone. Tonight we are ducking beneath the rustling fronds of a Mesozoic forest, a place where the trees drip with mist and the ground squelches beneath your feet. You're not here to picnic. You're here to track something old, something cunning. A creature large enough to flatten you, but with just enough softness to protect something smaller than a watermelon. Yes, we're talking about dinosaurs that raise their babies without ever building nests. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You're moving through the underbrush, half listening to a chorus of ancient insects. Then a low rumble. Not a predator's growl, but the deep-chested hum of something colossal and calm. You freeze. Just ahead, a juvenile dinosaur, maybe Maiasaura, leggy and twitchy, stands motionless. But it's not alone. To the left, there's the adult, and she's not on a nest. Here's the twist. Maiasaura, whose name literally means good mother lizard, was long believed to have been a devoted nester. But more recent interpretations of the fossil record suggest some species like it may have adopted hybrid parenting strategies. That is, they watched over their young but not from a stationary pile of sticks or mud. Instead, you might find a shallow pit, a scattering of leaves, or nothing at all. And yet somehow the baby survived. You duck lower as the adult moves slow, deliberate, her massive tail swaying like a living waltz. She doesn't call out, but she looks. She checks. And the little one flicks its head to follow her. The parenting here is constant but not confined. No wooden rocking cradles, no nest to fluff, just body language and proximity and a child smart enough to read it. Now, imagine you're a hatchling. You emerge from your shell in soft soil, not a cozy bowl. Around you, the forest pulses with heat and sound. Your parent isn't cuddled nearby. She's grazing 20 meters away. But something in your brain is wired to follow, to smell, to lock onto that exact scent profile like a heat-seeking missile. And you do. Scientists today still debate whether the earliest movements of some hatchlings were instinctual or socially taught, but either way they followed. You step sideways, nearly twisting your ankle in a shallow depression. There another clutch of broken eggshells, speckled and curled. No sign of trampling, and no nest structure. Just the fossilized echo of a moment life began here. Then it moved. Odd fact of the night, crocodiles, today's closest living relatives to dinosaurs, sometimes move their eggs if the nest gets flooded. They pick them up gently in their mouths and reposition them. Yes, crocodiles. So if you think dinosaurs weren't capable of at least some improvisation in childcare, you might need to rethink things. It's not all brute force and talons. You glance up. The forest is alive with movement, but there's no roar, no chase. Just a quiet maternal patrol. And what's eerie is how organized it feels. Young ones darting behind tree trunks but never too far. Adults pausing, sniffing the air, then moving on. It's less like a hunting pack and more like a kindergarten field trip where everyone's pretending not to panic. Of course, not all paleontologists agree. Some argue that evidence of non-nesting care is too sparse to be definitive. They point to the sheer number of eggshells found in classic nesting sites and say, look, this proves most dinosaurs were traditional nesters. But others counter that such sites are overrepresented precisely because they fossilize well, while the behaviors of nomadic parents, more mobile, less traceable, have been washed away by time. Still tonight, you're seeing it unfold. A glimpse maybe, but enough to feel the rhythm. There's intelligence here, not just in the minds of the dinosaurs, but in their strategies. Not every species needed to crouch protectively over eggs for weeks. Some had a different playbook entirely. And judging by how long dinosaurs ruled the earth, it worked. You press forward. The juvenile you've been watching disappears behind a copse of club moss. Its footsteps are silent. Its mother doesn't panic. She simply adjusts her path and eventually the baby reappears, chewing on something it probably shouldn't be chewing. You remember when humans evolved? We built cradles, we built houses, we strapped our young to our backs and carried them through everything from glaciers to deserts. And yet, the principle is the same. The young need protection, yes, but they also need motion. Sometimes the safest place isn't in a fixed nest. Sometimes it's simply under the watchful eye of someone who never stops moving. You pause to take it in. A world without nests yet full of care. Without lullabies yet full of instinct. And somehow, even without feathers or blankets, it feels warm. You crouch beside a toppled cycad, its roots tangled like a clawed hand, and you wait. There's no sound but the distant thump of massive limbs pressing into soft ground. Then you see it, a smaller dinosaur cradling something in its forelimbs. No nest, no buried pit, just a pair of leathery, oblong eggs held close to the chest as it shuffles forward like a thief in the night. You're watching one of the strangest theories in ancient parenting play out: mobile incubation. Scientists once believed that all dinosaurs left their eggs in stationary nests, but there's a growing if controversial idea that some small-bodied theropods may have been, for lack of a better word, walking incubators. Creatures like Troodon, with their oddly precise claws and lightweight frames, might have physically moved their eggs with them, shielding them from predators, floods, or even shifting temperatures. It's hard to prove sure, but the flexibility of their forelimbs and the shallow, dispersed egg finds suggest the possibility. Tonight, the one you're watching almost waddles with the burden. You wonder how it keeps balance. It grips the eggs delicately, like they might melt. There's a faint clicking from its throat, maybe communication, maybe stress. You resist the urge to whisper, "Careful, buddy," because, well, it wouldn't help. Historians still debate whether dinosaur limbs could support such complex manipulations without damaging the fragile eggshells. After all, even birds descendants of some theropods rarely carry eggs in their claws. But if evolution is anything, it's weird. And nature doesn't mind bending her own rules when survival's on the line. The dinosaur pauses at a stream. It sniffs, gently lowers one egg into the mud, then the other. Not buried, just cushioned. It backs off slightly, remaining in the shade. There's no nest, not even a boundary, just intuition. You shift position, your knees popping like bad wood. From here, the scene almost looks lazy, like it gave up halfway through building a home. But really, it's improvisation. A kind of parenting that doesn't rely on architecture, just mobility. Constant vigilance. Like those parents at public pools who never take their eyes off their toddlers. Odd fact of the night. Some desert lizards today lay eggs in damp sand they carry around stuck to their bodies via mucus. Yes, really. Evolution is gross and brilliant. So if that's happening today in lizards, it's not a huge leap to imagine a Cretaceous equivalent doing something equally odd. But back to your egg-hugging friend. You notice one of the eggs has a faint crack, not from mishandling, but from within. A nose, a movement. The shell flexes, wobbles, splits, and suddenly there's a wet, blinking head eyes, glassy and useless in the morning light. The adult jerks forward, drops its snout, and gently nuzzles the hatchling out. It's clumsy. The newborn tips to the side, chirps once, then collapses. But it's alive. And for a creature that was carried, not left, that's something special. What you're witnessing is care through relocation. A strategy most animals would never attempt due to the risk. And yet here it is, ancient and quiet and functional. The adult doesn't celebrate. It just retrieves the second egg and shifts slightly to block the breeze. There's no theater in prehistoric parenting, only necessity. You slide back behind the cycad, watching as the hatchling rights itself. It presses against the adult's side, its tiny claws gripping skin, its head tilting up for warmth. You think of kangaroos, pouches, marsupials carrying young in soft pockets. But this This is a walking oven with a protective attitude. There's an echo here, a behavioral continuity across epochs. Even without formal nests, the principle remains carry, protect, adapt. Survival isn't about comfort, it's about flexibility. And this species nailed it. Still, not everyone in the paleontological community agrees. Some argue that no fossil evidence directly supports mobile incubation. Others point to scattered remains and strange wear patterns on claws as indirect clues. The debate is loud ongoing and often fueled by coffee and fossil envy. But down here on the forest floor, you're watching a story that doesn't care about consensus. It only cares about staying alive. The adult moves again. It noses the hatchling toward a stand of tall grass crouching just enough to block its view from aerial predators. A shadow passes overhead, slow and lazy. Maybe a pterosaur. You don't get a clear look, but the adult does. It flattens, becomes part of the earth. The baby copies the movement. No crying, no panic, just instinct. You know that modern crocodilians hum and vibrate to communicate with unhatched eggs. You wonder if this dinosaur did the same, humming softly as it walked, its body a walking speaker for the lives inside it. You imagine the hatchling curled inside the egg, soothed by the rhythm of footsteps. A prehistoric lullaby. You hold your breath. The moment passes. The adult rises and you feel something you didn't expect: relief. You root for it. You want the baby to grow to someday carry its own eggs or hatchlings across this same forest. There's something hopeful here, something warm. Not every parent builds a nest. Some build trust. And tonight, that's what you're seeing, one step at a time. The trail is quieter now. You've moved deeper into a low valley where the soil turns warm and crumbles like cake. There's a sulfurous tinge in the air, and steam rises from narrow vents in the ground. You could be standing in a sauna built by tectonics, but this isn't about you. This is about a clutch of ancient eggs buried inches below your feet, baking in the earth like nature's slow-cooked secret. You kneel, brushing away a thin layer of sediment. Just under the surface, the speckled curve of an eggshell glints back at you. No nest, no adult in sight. Just eggs, perfectly spaced and sealed, beneath a layer of mineral-rich soil that retains heat like an oven. You're looking at what might be the Mesozoic equivalent of a geothermal daycare. Some dinosaurs, like the Therizinosaurus or possibly Megalolithus, which might belong to titanosaurs, are believed to have relied on passive environmental heat for incubation. Instead of brooding or guarding, they laid their eggs in carefully chosen locations: volcanic soil, rotting vegetation, or hot springs. Then they simply left. It sounds like neglect until you realize how clever it is. Why sit on eggs when the earth itself can do the job? It's not lazy, it's efficient. These dinosaurs weren't absentee parents. They were strategic planners, masters of thermal geography. You walk further along the ridge and come across another shallow basin filled with broken eggshell fragments. No signs of trampling. No burn marks. Just pieces scattered with strange uniformity. As though something came back. Not to nest, but to check. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs that used geothermal incubation ever returned to monitor their clutches. Some say they abandoned the site entirely. Others believe they came back in cycles, sniffing the ground, scanning for movement, or listening for the high-pitched chirps of newly hatched young. It's not an either-or, it might have varied species to species. But what if some parents did return not to sit, but to guide? You duck as a shadow. Crosses overhead, wide wings narrowing at the tips. Probably a Quetzalcoatlus, gliding lazy arcs against the dawn. A hatchling out here wouldn't stand a chance alone. But what if it wasn't alone? Off to the left, you spot faint tracks, smaller than a sauropods, but deliberate and clustered. 3 toes, narrow spacing, and beside them, half as small little feet prints tumbling forward, like someone's toddler learned to walk and refused to stop. The larger tracks turn back, pause, then return. Again and again, a loop. You're watching a dinosaur's travel pattern, one that circles back. It's the prehistoric version of just checking in. Odd fact of the night. Some sea turtles return to the exact beach where they were born to lay their own eggs, even though they never knew their mothers. How magnetic fields. Navigation instincts hardwired into their skulls. So, if turtles today can do that, why wouldn't a dinosaur remember where it buried its young and return out of something like instinct or maybe even habit? You press your hand into the soil. It's warm. Not hot. Not burning. Just a slow, steady warmth that cradles the eggs like a blanket from below. A perfect heat source. Self-sustaining. The dinosaur version of putting your baby monitor over a compost pile and hoping for the best. And still somehow it worked. But not everyone believes this was a common method. Critics point out that volcanic fields weren't everywhere, and that such sites would have been risky, prone to eruptions, gas leaks, predators. But others argue that the benefits outweighed the risks, especially for species that laid dozens of eggs at a time. If even a few made it, the system succeeded. You rise slowly, feeling the warmth radiating up through your boots. Around you, the wind carries faint vibrations, nothing alive, just echoes. But your imagination fills the gaps. You picture a young hatchling clawing up through the dirt, blinded by daylight, its nose crusted in dry soil. It squeaks maybe. It snorts. Then it stumbles toward the only scent it knows, the one left behind by a parent who passed this way hours or days before. And maybe, just maybe, that parent hears it, turns, comes back. Not to build a home, but to become one, just by being there. You lean on your knees, feeling how soft the ground is here. Not soggy, not dry, just right. And in that realization, you start to appreciate how clever these creatures really were. Parenting isn't about fluffing a nest. It's about creating a system that works even when you're not watching. A gust of wind stirs the dust around the egg chamber, lifting a feather-like plume. You step back, not wanting to disturb it. It's ancient, it's fragile, but it's not abandoned. Somewhere out there, a parent once walked away from this very spot, not in negligence, but in confidence. Confidence that the ground would warm, that the timing would align, that instincts would carry life across the next dangerous threshold. There's no comfort here. No blankets, no lullabies, no bedtime stories. Just thermal energy, dirt, and raw, bone-deep trust in nature's timing. And yet even now you feel that strange sense again, warmth. Not from the soil, but from the thought that maybe in their own way these creatures weren't so different from us. They just did parenting with fewer feathers and more lava. The sun's higher now, just starting to pierce through the canopy in golden shafts. You squint as the light glints off something ahead, not bone, not eggshell, but movement. A ripple in the low brush, a flicker of scales. You freeze. You're watching a herd pass by, and in the middle, half jogging to keep up, are the young ones, smaller, wobblier, less armored, but very much a part of the group. No nests, no nursery caves, just legs in motion. You trail behind the herd at a careful distance. They aren't moving fast, more of a rolling shuffle, like a crowd at a festival where no one wants to be first or last. The juveniles are awkwardly spaced among the adults, not corralled into the center like you'd expect from elephants or bison. But they're protected in a different way through rhythm, routine, and return. Some dinosaurs, especially those that lived in herds like Edmontosaurus or Camarasaurus, may have practiced what you'd call rotational care. They didn't build nests and then abandon the young, nor did they linger in one spot to rear them. Instead, they traveled in loops, returning to the same foraging grounds again and again, each time checking for stragglers, survivors, or newborns that had caught up. Imagine being a baby dino, waiting days for your mom to come back. And she does. Not by GPS, but by memory, by seasonal rhythm, maybe even by smell. The herd slows at a watering hole. Mud clings to their legs and steam rises from trampled grass. One adult stands still while a smaller juvenile climbs on its tail, slips off, then tries again. No one scolds. No one helps. This isn't helicopter parenting. It's a prehistoric version of figure it out, but I'm here if you really mess up. Historians still debate whether this kind of movement-based parenting counts as care or simply herd behavior. Were the adults returning out of instinct, or did they remember which areas had vulnerable young waiting? It's a blurry line, and the fossil record doesn't help much. Herd trackways don't preserve emotion, but your eyes are doing the work. You see an older dino double back to nose a sluggish juvenile. Just one nudge enough to get it moving again. Then it turns and rejoins the line. That's not instinct, that's intervention. Odd fact of the night. Some penguin colonies today leave chicks standing alone in freezing temperatures while the adults go fishing for days. When they return, they walk through a mass of screaming fuzzballs and somehow recognize their own kid by call alone. If birds can pull that off now, what stopped dinosaurs from doing something just as impressive? The herd begins to move again, a slow ripple of energy. You stay low and move parallel through the brush. A juvenile stumbles. A smaller one sprints to catch up, and always, there's an adult turning just enough to check without stopping. You find a clearing littered with trampled ferns and cracked stems, a resting spot, maybe even an impromptu daycare. The footprints here tell a story, larger prints making loops, smaller ones clustered in bursts. No eggs, no nests, just the memory of gathering. You crouch and press your fingers into a juvenile's print. It's shallow, but distinct, shaped like a teardrop with claws at the tip. Right beside it, another just as small, overlapping slightly. You imagine two young ones wrestling, collapsing in a heap. They probably got yelled at. Or ignored. Either works. What's striking is the spatial organization. Adults on the perimeter, juveniles near the center, but not always. Some small prints lead right up beside the big ones. That's trust. That's comfort. That's family. You sit for a while listening to the wind hum through the trees. No predators nearby. No tension in the air. This is a resting herd, not a fleeing one. And yet, they haven't let their guard down entirely. One adult stays standing, watching the tree-line, tail twitching just enough to say, "Don't even try it." This isn't parenting with lullabies. It's parenting with vigilance. It's parenting without staying put. You remember when humans began to form nomadic tribes? We traveled with infants strapped to backs, toddlers, clutching fingers, teens sent ahead to scout. No cribs, no bedrooms, just movement and memory. The dinosaurs did it first. The herd moves on again, ferns parting beneath them like waves. You catch sight of one young dino skipping, not walking, but hopping from foot to foot like it's playing. Another tries to copy it, fails, tries again. You almost laugh. Then you remember these two might not even have hatched from the same clutch. But out here, the herd is the family. Not all parenting requires a nest. Some requires a root, a rhythm, and just enough awareness to glance backward once in a while. You move along the old riverbed, your boots crunching dried mud shaped by a million-year-old flood. There's a hum in the air. Not sound, not wind, but something in your chest like instinct whispering. Pay attention. You do, because you've heard the stories. Stories of babies who found their mothers in forests as wide as continents, guided by nothing more than scent and some ancient hardwired pull. Ahead, something rustles in the undergrowth. You freeze. Two juvenile dinosaurs no bigger than ponies emerge at a trot. Their heads are low to the ground, tails stiff like bloodhounds on a trail. They sniff. Paws move again. Not lost, just tracking. You're watching one of the least flashy, most remarkable survival tools evolution ever gave these animals: chemical navigation. In species that didn't nest, those that left their young to hatch alone or scattered their clutches, there's a real chance that scent became the golden thread. Imagine this: a Maiasaura chick hatching beneath mossy debris. No nest, no siblings in sight, just heat leaves and a fading vapor trail of mother. So it follows, not a sprint, a shuffle. It inches toward the scent of its own survival. Modern analog crocodiles again. Baby crocs imprint on their mother's smell, and yes, they can track her across sandbanks. Even snakes recognize chemical cues from kin. That's right, snakes. If reptiles today are doing this without brains the size of a walnut, what could a clever little theropod manage? Odd fact of the night, penguin chicks recognize their parents not only by sound but by scent. And not just this smells familiar, they can distinguish between parents. That means the ability is ancient and adaptable and likely far older than we ever thought. You duck as a low branch snaps back from the juvenile's path. They're accelerating now, chirping short, excited pulses. And then ahead, a tail flicks. A massive herbivore, maybe an iguanodon, swivels her head. She doesn't move, doesn't call out, but she turns her flank toward them. A signal, like holding open a door. The juveniles don't run to her. They slow. They walk the final stretch with hesitant dignity, as if arriving late to a dinner party and pretending they meant to. One bumps its snout gently against her thigh. She doesn't flinch. She just flicks her tail again, curling it around slightly enough to shield, not enough to smother. Historians still debate whether this was true family recognition or generalized species bonding. In other words, did they know that was their mother, or just that she was a mother of their kind? The evidence is unclear, but the behavior, that's undeniable. You circle wide, keeping your scent out of the way. The wind shifts and the adult tilts her head just enough to sample the air. Then she turns her back on you. Not afraid, just done with you. It makes sense. In a world without constant parental supervision, scent would be the breadcrumb trail. You couldn't count on nests. You couldn't always see, but you could smell. Pheromones, oils, gland secretions rubbed onto tree trunks or passed through footprints. A chemical map no predator could decode. There's something elegant about it. Invisible parenting. No clumsy carrying, no frantic searching. Just leave a scent and let the bond do the rest. And then, there are the false trails. You find one nearby, prints leading to a shallow hollow now empty. A predator had circled it. Got nothing. Because the chick had followed the real trail, not the visual one. It didn't go toward a shape, it went toward a smell. You can't help but grin. That's survival by memory and molecules. The brush rustles again, and you catch a glimpse of another young one later, hatched maybe. It pauses, sniffs the wind, then starts its journey. You don't follow. You already know how the story goes. Back then, in the age of giants, not all families stayed together, but the ones that did often did it through trails you couldn't see. Parenting wasn't a place, it was a path. And somewhere in that path, some chemical trace was the wordless promise, you'll find me. The ground softens under your feet, damp and cratered by countless footprints. It smells like wet bark and dung, not exactly fragrant, but oddly comforting. You're standing in what can only be described as a prehistoric cul-de-sac. There's no central nest, no leader barking orders. Just a loose cluster of dinosaurs milling around in lazy spirals, and look closer. Almost all of them are juveniles, except not all the big ones are parents. One nudges another's young aside to reach a fern cluster. Another hunkers down as three little ones crawl under its belly for shade. You frown. This isn't a nuclear family, this is shared chaos. Welcome to the Mesozoic version of a babysitting club. Some paleontologists propose that certain species of dinosaurs, especially those that traveled in herds, practice communal care. It wasn't about my kid versus yours. It was about the survival of the group. You raise them all or you lose them all. You step closer and watch a Hypacrosaurus adult sit still while a pair of squawking juveniles climb up its tail like it's a jungle gym. No reaction, no rejection. That might not be its offspring, it just lets it happen. The idea of alloparenting care provided by individuals who aren't the biological parents isn't new. It happens today in elephants, wolves, even flamingos. But in the dinosaur world, the signs are scattered. Fossil sites have been found where multiple juveniles of the same age and a few larger adults are all buried together, often without clear evidence of direct family bonds. Historians still debate whether these sites represent social groups or just tragic mass deaths. Some argue it's coincidence. Others believe it's cooperation, shared responsibilities, rotating watch, or even surrogate parenting roles. Odd fact of the night. Emperor penguins form giant creches where thousands of chicks huddle together while the adults take turns feeding and guarding. There are actual fights over who gets a turn with the kids. It's the worst daycare you can imagine, but it works. You duck behind a half-fallen tree trunk as a juvenile Corythosaurus lets out a weird burping call. Another answers. The two scamper across the clearing and plow headfirst into the flank of an older dinosaur who snorts, steps sideways, and allows them to rest beneath its bulk. Not flinching, not fussing, just accepting. You watch this and think of modern human behavior. Grandparents stepping in, older siblings carrying babies, neighborhoods where kids just orbit whatever adult's closest. It's chaotic, it's inefficient, and it's deeply effective. One adult stomps twice low and slow and the group shifts. It's not panic, it's a signal. The younger ones cluster slightly closer. Another adult moves toward the perimeter. No words, no schedule. But the roles rotate quietly, organically, instinctively. Parenting here isn't individual, it's distributed. A cloud of care. You remember the old fossil beds in Mongolia where dozens of Protoceratops skeletons were found tangled together, no obvious predators in sight. Many were juveniles. Some were older, and nobody knows if they were one family or many. But it paints a picture, doesn't it? One of mutual protection rather than solo survival. You shift again, careful not to rustle the underbrush. A juvenile passes right in front of you, eyes wide, steps clumsy. You freeze. It pauses, sniffs the air, then chirps toward the herd. Instantly, an adult answers. Not running to its side, just acknowledging. The juvenile relaxes and trots back in. It's not a command structure, it's jazz. Each adult picking up where another leaves off as needed. Imperfect, yes, but adaptable. And in a world where eggs could be eaten by the dozen and predators lurked everywhere, adaptability was the game. There's no judgment here. No tally of who did more diaper duty, just collective effort. And remarkably, it doesn't seem to lead to confusion, it leads to calm. You grin as another young one tumbles onto its side and is promptly nudged upright by a snout. The adult then nudges the other one too, just for good measure. You swear you hear it sigh. These weren't families in the modern sense. They were ecosystems of nurture. No nesting. No problem. They replaced it with shared presence. And maybe, just maybe, that's how you raise a generation that survives meteors, volcanoes, and ice ages, by remembering that sometimes it takes more than one to raise something ancient. You're deep in the under canopy now, walking where the sun barely reaches, and the ground is soft with layers of leaf litter older than your species. It's quiet, almost eerily so, until you hear it, the rhythmic thump of something massive. You press behind a fallen log and watch as a pair of juveniles trot out from the ferns. Right on their heels is a colossus. It moves like a mountain on legs. A massive sauropod, maybe a Apatosaurus, with a neck like a suspension bridge and a tail that could knock over a school bus. But it isn't alone. Underneath it, like mice under a table, walk three smaller ones. Not infants, not hatchlings, just little sauropods following, ducking, learning. You watch as the adult slows. It lowers its neck, gives the ground a sweeping sniff, then moves on. The little ones mimic every step like backup dancers who haven't memorized the routine yet. One stumbles. Another nudges it back up. Then they keep moving, always under the giant's shadow. There's a theory among paleontologists that juvenile dinosaurs, especially massive herbivores, didn't need nests because they had something better: their parents' sheer size. The young walked, rested, and grazed within a living fortress. No need for a shelter when your parent could blot out the sun. This method doesn't just offer protection, it teaches. The young learn migration routes, feeding behavior, water sources, and predator awareness. Parenting becomes a mobile classroom with no chalkboards, just feet and shadows. Odd fact of the night: baby giraffes walk within hours of birth and spend most of their early weeks in the center of the herd, shielded by taller relatives. They're not cared for in a cuddly way, but the structure of the group keeps them alive. Survival by positioning. Historians still debate whether sauropods provided extended parental care or simply tolerated their young. The fossil record is ambiguous. Juvenile tracks often appear near adult ones, but does that mean companionship or just coincidence? The jury's out. But when you see this slow-motion parade of giants and tagalongs, you start to believe in intentionality. The adult stops again. The juveniles gather beneath her belly like chicks under a broody hen. She shifts weight carefully, deliberately. That tail, lethal as a whip, curls around just enough to discourage anything from sneaking up. No snarls, no roars, just presence. You shuffle sideways for a better view and catch one juvenile mimicking its elder, sniffing the same log, lifting one foot, like it's contemplating a step it's not brave enough to take. Then it does. The adult glances back just once, then moves on. And here's the strange part: there's no real contact. No licking, no cuddling, no vocalizing. Yet everything about the scene radiates connection. Not affectionate, maybe, but aware. The adult knows it's being followed. The young ones trust they'll be led. It's not parenting by emotion, it's parenting by gravity. You follow at a distance as the group moves through a shallow ravine. The adult crushes undergrowth with each step, leaving an easy path for the juveniles behind. They aren't just protected, they're enabled. That's the power of a 30-ton guardian. You don't need a nest, you are the nest. There's a rustle to your right. Another sauropod, smaller, maybe an older juvenile, joins the group. The adult doesn't react, just makes space. The rhythm adjusts, and the march continues. In modern terms, it's like a parent driving a slow-moving train and letting any kid who keeps up hop aboard. No tickets, no IDs. Just momentum and tolerance. You remember when humans figured out that the safest way to cross dangerous land wasn't to run alone, but to move in numbers. And not fast, just together. The dinosaurs had that one figured out early. And in their case, together meant being born into a slow-moving wall of meat and muscle that could stomp threats into fossils. As the herd fades into the trees, one juvenile lingers. It lifts its snout, smells the air, then bolts to catch up. The adult slows slightly, just long enough to let it find its place again. Not nurture, but not neglect either. You exhale, finally stepping out from the log. It's funny. You came looking for nests, for feathers, for comfort. But what you're finding instead is something far quieter and in a way more beautiful. Protection doesn't always look like cuddles. Sometimes it's a shadow to walk under, a direction to follow, a pace that leaves no one behind. The forest thins, giving way to open plains where the wind moves in long, brushing waves. You can see them before you hear them: sauropods again. This time, dozens. Their necks rise like organic cranes, swaying in unison. But you're not looking at the adults, you're looking at the little ones trotting along beneath them, not just surviving, but thriving. It's a mystery that still bugs scientists. How did such slow, vulnerable juveniles manage to grow up in a world full of claws and teeth? The answer might lie in exactly what you're seeing right now. What some paleontologists call the slow giant's secret strategy. The herd is in no rush. They're not fleeing, not charging, just gliding across the land in deliberate, plodding elegance. And in that slowness, the young ones are protected not by speed but by predictability. You can't lose your kid if you never leave them behind. You spot a particularly small juvenile with legs barely longer than fence posts falling slightly behind. But the adult nearest to it pauses, snorts a warning breath, and shifts course to let the straggler catch up. No drama, no screeching, just an adjustment. And that might be the whole secret: adjustments. A theory gaining traction suggests that sauropod parenting wasn't about active defense or intimate care, but about setting a pace that the youngest could handle. They didn't build nests because they were the nests, a lumbering procession of slow-moving safety. Odd fact of the night. In some reindeer herds, the entire migration slows down for the calves. Not just once, every year. And reindeer aren't even known for being nurturing. They just know the herd moves at the speed of its youngest member. You shift slightly as a gust of warm wind carries the scent of crushed leaves and wet soil. The herd's path is clear now, a living highway of massive footprints. The juveniles stay within the adult's wake, their small bodies shielded from side winds and heat. It's like a mobile greenhouse, one that breathes and sways and adapts. Historians still debate whether this behavior was instinctual or learned. Did sauropods slow down on purpose, or were they simply incapable of moving faster? Were the juveniles included by design or just lucky enough to keep up? The fossils don't answer those questions, but behavior leaves traces, even if only in logic. And the logic here is compelling. A species that takes decades to mature can't afford to lose its young every time it moves. So it doesn't move like a predator, it moves like a village. A slow, deliberate, thundering village. You watch a young one rear up, testing its legs. It stumbles, flails, then plants all 4 feet down again. The adult beside it doesn't react, doesn't correct, it just keeps moving. Because in a herd like this, every wobble gets absorbed. The group makes space for mistakes. A juvenile chews a leaf and chokes just briefly. A bigger one nudges it in the side, not out of affection, but out of rhythm. Everything here has rhythm. The way they walk, the way they breathe, even the way they stop. One particularly ancient-looking adult hunkers down, lowering its chest to the earth with a groan that shakes the dirt. 3 little ones gather near its belly. They don't rest, though. They climb over its forelimbs, use it as a playground. You almost laugh when one of them gets a tail in the face and flops dramatically backward like a cartoon turtle. There's no cooing, no fussing, but there's no rejection either. Just space, just slowness. Enough space to grow, enough time to figure out how to walk, eat, balance, and keep up. That's the trick, isn't it? Not nesting, not guarding, just making the world safe enough by existing slowly and predictably. When predators race, these giants wait, and their babies stay alive. You remember human toddlerhood, how we slow our pace to match a child's little steps, how we instinctively match their rhythm so they're not left behind. And here, millions of years before humans ever trudged through a jungle, dinosaurs were doing the same without a thought, without a plan, but with perfect effectiveness. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows that stretch across the ground like fingers. The herd bunches closer together. The juveniles circle and lying in soft pockets left by the adults' footprints. They curl their tails around themselves, protected not by fences or caves, but by the patience of giants. You take one last look. There's no nesting here, no bedtime rituals. But there's peace, there's time, and in this world, time is everything. You're heading into rougher ground now. The trees thin out, but the terrain becomes jagged, broken by ancient lava flows and wind-worn rocks. It's not the kind of place you'd expect to find tender parenting, but then again, nothing about dinosaur care has gone how you expected. A sound catches you off guard, a whip-like crack, sharp and echoing. Then silence, then the same sound again, this time closer. You press flat against a boulder just in time to see the source. A tail. Not just any tail, but one wielded with precision, slicing through the air behind a mother ankylosaur. And she's not using it for show. Around her are 3 juveniles, all squat and spiky, looking like armored bread loaves with eyes. They're clustered tight near her legs, alert and wide-eyed as a predator. Something lean and toothy paces the ridge above. The adult doesn't charge. doesn't roar. She just cracks her tail again hard enough to chip bark off a nearby tree. It's a warning, not just to the predator, but to the young. Some dinosaurs didn't build nests because they didn't need to. Their strategy was built into their skeleton's armor: intimidation, and the willingness to weaponize their bodies to buy their offspring time. This wasn't passive protection. It was active deterrence. Odd fact of the night, porcupine mothers will slap the ground with their tails to warn off predators, positioning their quilled backs between danger and their pups. Prehistoric armored dinosaurs may have done something shockingly similar, minus the squeaking. You watch as one of the juveniles attempts to wander. The adult ankylosaur turns no sound, no stomp, just a slow pivot. The wandering one freezes. The tail swings low, sweeping across the ground like a broom. Not striking, just guiding. A toothy lullaby with zero tolerance for nonsense. Historians still debate whether tail club dinosaurs use their weapons in parental defense or only against threats to themselves. Some fossilized tails show wear patterns that hint at repeated purposeful use. Others look pristine, as if reserved only for dire moments. But if you ask the predator on that ridge, which now seems to be reconsidering its options, it's not worth the gamble. You ease along the rocks, keeping your head low. The ankylosaur has now positioned herself in a wide stance, blocking a gap in the stones. Behind her, the juveniles nibble at low-growing shrubs, safe in the narrow shadow of her bulk. It's clear she's not nurturing in the cuddly sense, but she's parenting all the same, by making herself a wall. Another adult lumbers into view. He's larger, tail dragging with an audible scrape, but he doesn't interfere. Just stops a few meters away, eyes fixed on the ridge. Backup, a tag team. No nest necessary, just proximity and intimidation. You realize suddenly how quiet it is. Not because the world is peaceful, because the world knows. The message has been sent: not these babies, not today. One juvenile sneezes, startling itself. The others flinch. The mother doesn't even glance. She knows the difference between danger and a nose tickle. You smile. That's the confidence of experience. She steps forward now, nudging the smallest with her snout, a gentle prod. The little one scrambles to follow, nearly tripping over its own armored tail. They begin moving single file through a narrow break in the terrain. The male stays behind, watching the ridgeline a beat longer before following. You track them as far as you can. No sound, no fuss. Just the rhythmic drag of tail armor against stone, the occasional puff of breath, and the low rumble of footfalls. A silent convoy. This kind of parenting doesn't look like love, but it's fiercely effective. It's not about softness, it's about survival. And in an environment like this, where death crouches behind every rock that might be the only kind that works. You think back to modern animals. Bison standing in circles. Musk oxen forming walls. Crocodiles silently guiding their young down riverbanks with their tails. Defense as nurture. Violence held in reserve for the sake of protection. The ankylosaurs disappear into the fog. Their backs glisten like shields. Their tails hang low, dragging peace into the wilderness. And you realize that maybe there is such a thing as a lullaby made of bone. No nests, no cribs, just armor silence and the unspoken promise. As long as I stand, you will not fall. A drizzle begins to fall as you follow a slope carpeted with ferns. The light shifts softer now, filtered through moisture dripping from branch to branch. You hear the sound before you see the scene. A low, raspy breath, almost like snoring. Then you spot them. A cluster of oviraptorosaurs sprawled in a half circle on a dry ridge. Some sleep. Others blink lazily. And in the center, a ring of eggs. But here's the weird part. They're not on the eggs. They're just near them. You creep closer, careful not to snap any twigs, and crouch behind a mossy rock. One of the adults raises its head. Big eyes narrow. Snout a beak, sharp enough to split fruit or bones. But it doesn't move toward the eggs. It shifts slightly to the side, stretches a claw, and rests it gently on the ground. Oviraptorosaurs were once thought to be egg thieves, hence their name. But fossil evidence flipped the script. Some specimens were found curled up protectively near nests, not raiding them. Yet many of these skeletons weren't on the nests but beside them, like they were watching, guarding, maybe even incubating without full contact. It's unclear. Historians still debate whether these dinosaurs actually brooded their eggs like birds or simply stood guard nearby. Their bones are light bird-like, and many had feathered arms perfect for sheltering. But some fossils show them just near eggs, not on them, not wrapped around them. Odd fact of the night. There's a bird today, the malleefowl, that doesn't sit on its eggs at all. Instead, it buries them in mounds of compost and regulates the temperature by adding or removing dirt like a thermostat. No contact, no brooding, but it's still attentive parenting, just at arm's length. That's what this scene feels like. The oviraptorosaurs aren't cuddling their eggs, they're regulating from a distance. One adult stands and walks a slow circuit around the nest ring. Every few steps, it taps the ground with a claw. Then satisfied, it returns to its original spot and curls back up, head over chest, tail tucked tight. The eggs themselves are arranged with eerie precision. Long and symmetrical, pointed at one end, set in pairs. You've seen enough fossils to know this isn't random. It's design. No twigs, no grass, just bare earth and parental geometry. A juvenile scampers in from behind a log, too old to have come from this clutch but still young enough to want company. It darts between two adults and flops down, tail smacking the ground. No one scolds it. No one shifts. They just make room. You stay still for a long time, watching as another adult lowers its feathered arms toward the eggs, not touching but close enough to shield. Then it sighs. Actually sighs. And you realize you're holding your breath. This isn't fierce. It's not dramatic. It's just quiet intention. No nests. No problem. These dinosaurs made parenting more modular. Less about contact, more about vigilance. Less helicopter, more satellite. And it worked. Fossils of oviraptorosaurs have been found in multiple life stages, suggesting some species stuck around beyond hatching. Not every baby was left to wander. Some had shadows that stayed with them. You watch one adult adjust its position, lifting one foot, curling it under its belly like a bird roosting on a cold wire. It shakes slightly, feathers ruffling. You catch a glimpse of downy underplume like fuzz on a chick. Another juvenile appears. This one holds something in its beak, a beetle maybe. It drops it near the eggs and waits. Nothing happens. It picks the beetles up again, crunches it, then drops it again. You want to laugh. It's showing off. Or practicing. You remember when humans invented babysitting? Not just survival, but rehearsal. Let the young mimic. Let them pretend to care. One day they might need to. As the drizzle thickens into real rain, the oviraptorosaurs shift closer together. Not touching the eggs, but closer. The adults arrange themselves like a ring of watchtowers. No fuss, no sound, just the hum of warm breath and the tick of water on scales and feathers. You back away slowly, the way you might leave a sleeping nursery. No need to see them hatch. Just knowing they're safe is enough. Tonight you learned something subtle. Parenting doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just staying close, just watching, just being there even when you're not sitting on top of everything like a broody hen. Because even a distance of 2 feet when filled with intention can become a wall no predator wants to cross. The rain is stopped, but the world still drips. Every leaf you brush aside leaves a wet stripe across your sleeve, and the ground squelches with each step. You've wandered farther into lower terrain now, muddier, darker, thick with reeds and rot. But up ahead there's movement again. You crouch behind a half-fallen tree trunk and squint. A group of hadrosaurs, duck-billed herding herbivores, grazes in a wide arc. The adults rip low-hanging ferns from the edges of the clearing, and between them, weaving clumsily, are their young. Wobbling, chewing, bumping into each other like wind-up toys. Then you see it something quiet, almost nothing at all. One adult lowers its head and gives the nearest juvenile a push, not a shove, a nudge, with the flat, soft edge of its snout. You freeze, watching closer. It happens again. A second juvenile struggles to climb over a fallen log. An adult ambles over, dips its head, and with gentle insistence pushes the baby's back end with its snout. The little one topples forward, recovers, and then skitters away as if nothing happened. No roar, no call, just 1,000 teeth and one gentle nudge. Modern hadrosaurs are thought to have had complex social structures, including vocalizations and visual cues. But fossil evidence also suggests they physically guided their young, not with claws or wings, or cries, but with body language and physical contact. Some hadrosaurs had elongated snouts perfect for prodding without hurting. Their tails, stiff and muscular, may have been used not just for balance but for redirecting young who wandered too far. Odd fact of the night: elephants use their trunks to touch, guide, and even discipline their young, not unlike a dinosaur's snout. And elephants aren't exactly known for subtlety either. But in those moments of contact, it's pure communication. Historians still debate how tactile dinosaurs really were. Were these nudges intentional? Or are we reading too much into posture and position? The fossil record, after all, doesn't preserve touch, but the logic holds. In creatures whose arms were too short to hold and whose vocal cords may not have matched their brain power, physical gestures were everything. You ease closer to the edge of the clearing. One adult walks past, its tail swinging low and wide. Two juveniles scamper just ahead of it. When one lags behind, the tail gently bumps its flank. No force. Just enough contact to redirect, like a mother steering a toddler away from a staircase. That's what this is: guidance without restraint. There's something poetic about it. These aren't bright, busy animals like crows or dolphins. They're calm, steady, grounded, but they know their place. And they know how to keep their kids alive, not by grabbing them, not by screaming at them, but by nudging them into the right decision. You watch a particularly determined little one sneak toward a low shrub eyeing the berries. An adult glances over, stomps once, not in alarm, but in warning. The juvenile stops, thinks, then backs off. You don't know if those berries are poisonous or just someone's snack stash, but the message was clear. Parenting without nests, without burrows, without helicoptering. Just presence, patience, and the occasional tap on the shoulder with a tail the size of a canoe. The young cluster now resting in a curve of bent reeds. The adults stay upright, grazing in wide circles, always orbiting back around. It's like clockwork or choreography. Every step seems mundane until you realize it's all for the kids. Not a single nest, not a single fenced-in space, just moving guardians and learning children. You think of traffic cops guiding a school crossing. Big, serious figures pointing the way, never needing to raise their voices. You remember when human kids learned by watching, by being nudged gently away from fire toward food, away from cliffs toward shelter. And long before that, in a world without words, this was the first language: touch, motion, repetition. The hadrosaurs begin to move again, ambling toward a nearby water source. The juveniles rise and follow one by one. And as they leave the clearing, you see it one last time: a baby falling behind a giant snout, reaching down, and the softest push forward. Because sometimes parenting isn't about instruction, it's about direction. A nudge toward survival repeated again and again until the young don't need it anymore. You're trekking across flatter terrain now, dusty, baked hard under the thinning canopy. The scent of dry leaves hangs in the air, but there's something sharper mixed and something alive. You stop. To your left, movement, not lumbering, not grazing, slinking, predator. And yet this one isn't hunting. It's holding something. You crouch, eyes wide, heart starting to race as a small dromaeosaurid, maybe a velociraptor, maybe something even stranger, pads silently across the dirt. In its mouth, carefully gripped between two curved rows of teeth, is a squirming hatchling. It doesn't bite, doesn't shake, just carries. You freeze as the adult lowers its head, sets the hatchling down gently, and nudges it forward with its snout. The baby chirps and stumbles awkwardly across a fallen branch. The adult nudges it again, this time with a side swipe of its jaw. This isn't feeding, this is ferrying. Modern crocodiles do this all the time. So do cats. So do wolves. But dinosaurs historians still debate whether theropods, especially small-bodied carnivores, engaged in active transport of their young. After all, these were animals with slicing teeth, claws, and reputations sharper than their skull ridges. But here you are, watching something that shouldn't exist, a carnivore playing taxi driver. Odd fact of the night. Some fossilized dromaeosaur embryos have been found curled in what appear to be solitary nests, but always oddly spread apart, not clustered. This has led to one theory: parents move them after hatching one by one, either to feeding areas or hiding spots. Not brooders. Couriers. The adult raptor flicks its tail once fast and low, scanning the horizon. You instinctively duck, but it's not you it's worried about. Across the clearing, another juvenile chirps from under a log. The adult gives a low hiss, barely audible, and trots over. Another hatchling waits, eyes bright, trembling. It picks that one up too. There's a rhythm now. Pick up, place, nudge, repeat. It's not fast, not panic, just deliberate. You realize you're watching a relocation, one that involves teeth but not violence. The jaw isn't a weapon tonight. It's a cradle. You press back into a shaded nook, careful not to rustle anything. The adult raptor now has both hatchlings nestled against a small rock outcrop, shielded from view. It circles them once, scratches the ground lightly, and then vanishes back into the brush. A few minutes pass. Then it returns with food. A half-chewed something, small enough to share and already torn up. It sets it down and retreats 2 steps, eyes never blinking. The hatchlings pounce on it. Clumsy, greedy, but learning. You can't believe what you're seeing. You were told theropods were monsters, slicers, predators programmed for kill or be killed. And yet this one just moved its kids across a dangerous field, brought them dinner, and gave them space to figure it out. That's not instinct, that's strategy. It makes you wonder how many times behavior like this went unpreserved. How many fossils were found and dismissed as unrelated when really they were family snapshots, parent. Here offspring, there separated by time and 100 feet of sediment. You think back to big cats. Leopards especially often move their cubs one by one through dangerous terrain. They choose hiding spots. They plan. Not because they think in paragraphs, but because survival is a story written in small choices. And this raptor, it just wrote another sentence. You inch closer to the outcrop. The hatchlings are asleep now, curled up in soft dirt. The adult is perched on a rock above them, tail twitching rhythmically. You swear it sees you, but it doesn't move. It's focused on the wind, on the brush, on everything except itself. Because good parents in the wild don't nap when the kids do. This, you realize, might be the rarest kind of parenting we've seen so far. Not shared, not passive, but intentional. Individual, fiercely personal. Not every species could afford to stay in one place, and not every nest was worth guarding. But if you could carry your child, carry them. You had an edge. You didn't need a home, you were the home. One of the hatchlings stirs. The adult responds immediately with a low chirp. Not a roar, not a bark, just a cue. Settle, stay close, I'm here. You take one last look before backing away. And as you retreat into the trees, you realize something else. In a world where everything eats everything else, parenting like this, quiet, precise, jaw-based, isn't just rare, it's radical. The air is cooler. Now, dusk creeping in like a second skin. The trees hush themselves, the insects calm their chorus, and for a moment the entire world seems to lean in and listen. You do too because ahead, just barely carried on the wind, is sound. Not rustling, not thudding, calling. You move toward it following faint rhythmic notes. Not music, not speech, but something in between. Then you see them, a small herd of Parasaurolophus crested duck-billed dinosaurs, their silhouettes ghost-like against the darkening sky. One adult lifts its head, the bony crest curved back like a horn from a forgotten instrument. It exhales, and the sound that emerges is low, resonant, and mournful. A few moments later, three juveniles come bounding from the underbrush. You don't need a translator, that was a roll call. Fossil evidence shows that hadrosaurs had complex nasal passages and crest structures likely used for vocalization. Parasaurolophus, with its iconic tube-like crest, may have produced sounds similar to foghorns' low-frequency tones that could travel for miles, and perhaps, as you're witnessing now, serve as long-distance communication between parent and young. Historians still debate how nuanced these calls really were. Were they specific signals, come here, danger, or stay put, or just general broadcasts no one knows? But the structure of their anatomy suggests a vocal system that was meant to be heard, meant to be recognized. Odd fact of the night, baby crocodiles begin vocalizing inside the egg, chirping, so their mother knows they're ready to hatch. She'll even help them dig out of the nest if she hears enough voices. Vocal parenting might go deeper than we ever imagined, right into the womb, or the shell. You stay low as the herd shifts. The adult calls again, and this time not just 3 but 8 juveniles answer from different directions. They converge quickly, chirping and peeping in a chorus of feedback. Some are clumsy, one falls, but they all find their way to the adult, who now stands taller like a lighthouse beam in a sea of rustling grass. You notice that the juveniles don't cling. They scatter around the adult, still moving, still grazing, but they stay within earshot. Every few minutes, another call. Low, measured, constant, not urgent, just present. You've heard this before, not in the wild but in human homes. Mothers humming while cooking, fathers whistling while working. Sounds that say, I'm here. You're safe, keep playing. The herd moves slowly toward a shallow ravine. The adults at the front bellow once short and sharp. The juveniles stop, not panicked, just waiting. The calls switch rhythm, lower faster, as if saying, watch your step. They descend in clusters, cautious but not afraid. One juvenile strays too far. It chirps, then freezes. The response is immediate, a trumpet-like note from an adult halfway across the slope. The juvenile pivots, then bolts back toward the sound. This isn't chaos, it's sonar, parenting through echo, and it makes sense. In a world too loud for whispers, sound was the bridge between generations. You couldn't always see your young. You couldn't always stay beside them. But if you could teach them to recognize your voice, you never really had to. One juvenile lingers at the bottom of the ravine, whining in a drawn-out bleat that you swear sounds like a toddler throwing a tantrum. An adult responds not with a command, but with a series of rising notes, almost like coaxing. The juvenile finally trots forward. You smile. Some things never change. You think of how modern herders call their sheep with specific tones, of how bird parents and chicks develop matching voice prints to find each other in colonies of thousands. Vocal bonding isn't rare. What's rare is seeing it fossilized in action right here in a chorus of duck-billed ghosts. They don't need nests. They don't need fences. They have sound, and that sound is the boundary. One last note echoes across the ridge, a deep, foggy hum. The herd stops. Every juvenile looks up. Then the adults form a loose semicircle. The young settle inside it, lying down in soft grass as the sky bleeds into purple. The calls fade, replaced by breathing. Deep, steady, musical. You back away slowly, the way one tiptoes from a nursery filled with sleeping babies. And you think maybe for the first time tonight, that sound is its own kind of touch. One that carries across distances. One that says, I'm still here. Come back. You're safe. The forest seems quieter now. Not from stillness, but from anticipation. You're nearing the edge of a wide clearing when you catch something strange in the dirt. A juvenile dinosaur, small feathered bipedal bouncing between two towering figures that look nothing like it. You blink. Once, twice. The two adults, tall and horned like Pachyrhinosaurus, move together with heavy, deliberate steps. The juvenile flits between their legs like a bird that hasn't learned fear. But it doesn't match. The horns, the tail, the snout, all wrong. This isn't their baby. You ease behind a tree and watch. The juvenile pecks at the ground, chirps, nudges the foot of the nearest adult. The horned giant snorts softly and shifts, letting the little one lean under its belly for shade. You've stumbled into a prehistoric oddity, mixed species herding, and even stranger cross-species parenting. There are a few fossil sites that hint at this phenomenon. A cluster of juvenile theropods preserved alongside hadrosaurs, or small ceratopsians found among the feet of massive herbivores. Historians still debate what these mixed groupings mean. Were they accidental, opportunistic, or some dare to suggest adoptive? Odd fact of the night. In the African savanna today, young wildebeest sometimes follow zebras during migration. Not because they're related, but because zebras remember water routes better. In return, wildebeest add numbers which reduces the zebra herd's chance of being picked off. Mutual benefit, not family, just function. Here, though, it feels more than that. The juvenile, you're not even sure what species it is, tries to climb a tree root and slips. One of the adults rumbles, then dips its massive head and gently lifts the little one with the side of its snout. A moment of balance, then down again. The juvenile chirps in triumph. The adult says nothing. You wonder what happened. Was this baby left behind by its own kind? Did its original herd vanish in a flood, a stampede, a predator ambush? And when it found these horned strangers, did it just decide to stay? What's remarkable is how the adults tolerate it. They don't protect it actively, not like it's their own, but they accommodate it. They walk slower when it tires. They widen their formation to keep it in the middle. They adapt. You see it again as another juvenile from their own species nudges the interloper. Not a challenge, more like a test. The smaller one chirps back. Something about that sound must satisfy because the native juvenile bumps shoulders with it, then trots on. Maybe that's the secret. Not recognition, not blood. Just rhythm. You step carefully around the edge of the clearing. The mismatched herd grazes peacefully now. The little one shadows the larger juveniles, copying their movements, practicing head bobs and tail flicks. No one corrects it. No one scolds. You remember stories of orphaned elephants adopted by unrelated herds? Of birds raising the chicks of completely different species? Of wolves tolerating pups that aren't theirs? Not because they feel pity, but because something in the group just adjusts. Parenting, it turns out, is flexible. You think back to early humans, how villages often raised children communally, no matter whose blood ran through their veins. If the group survived, the child did too. That was the rule. And perhaps that rule is older than fire. The sun sets slowly behind the trees, casting long shadows over the clearing. One adult grunts softly. The group shifts again, forming a semicircle. The juveniles settle in the center. The odd one curls beside the leg of the largest adult who doesn't flinch. It simply stands guard. You take one last look as you slip back into the brush. A herd that makes room for a stranger. A baby that found safety not where it was born, but where it was allowed to stay. And you wonder how many lives across time survived, not because of instinct, but because of grace. You move slower now. The world feels dimmed, hushed, like even the insects are catching their breath. The air is thick with the scent of moss and thyme. And here at last you come to a quiet field where no trails cross, no herds march, and no sounds call from crest to crest. But the ground is uneven, subtly. You kneel, brush your fingers through the soil, and feel it pockets of shell. Fragmented, crushed. Scattered like someone whispered begin and walked away. No nests, no guards, just broken beginnings. Some dinosaurs paleontologists believe didn't guard their young. They didn't carry or call or nudge. They simply laid their eggs and vanished, not out of cruelty, out of strategy. Here lies the final piece in your puzzle: species that survived not by coddling, but by maximizing odds. Lay 100 eggs. Let the strong ones live. It worked for turtles, for insects, and for a time for dinosaurs. Odd fact of the night. The leatherback sea turtle lays around 100 eggs per nest, but fewer than 1 in 1,000 hatchlings survive to adulthood. Nature isn't always sentimental. Sometimes it's statistical. You step gently across the field, each footprint landing beside a life that once tried to begin. And yet this place doesn't feel abandoned. It feels like a plan. Brutal, efficient, ancient. One shell is smoother than the rest, less fragmented. You lift it carefully and imagine what it held. A tiny heartbeat, a pair of blinking eyes, a thing that hatched alone, stepped into the grass and never looked back. Because that was the design. Don't wait. Don't cry. Just move. Historians still debate whether species that skipped nesting had shorter parental bonds or none at all. But the pattern repeats across time. Not every species invests in the individual. Some invest in the wave, and that wave kept moving. You glance up. A single juvenile, a two-legged thing, small and feathery, dashes through the tall grass ahead. Alone. Unbothered. It pauses, glances back at you, and then keeps running. Toward what? It doesn't matter. Forward is enough. You smile. Because here's the quiet truth. Care doesn't always wear a face. It doesn't always look like love. Sometimes care is choosing the perfect soil so your eggs will stay warm. Sometimes it's walking slowly enough that your child can keep up. Sometimes it's cracking your tail like a whip so a predator thinks twice. Sometimes it's singing into the dark so your baby knows you're still breathing. And sometimes it's knowing when to walk away so your child learns to walk forward. No nests, no lullabies, just rhythms, shadows, whispers in the dirt. And yet their young survived. And because they did, we're here. Standing in their footprints, listening for echoes, wondering what kind of world raised them. And in the stillness, you realize they didn't just survive without nests. They thrived. In the deep hush of prehistoric time, parenting took many forms. None of them modern, few of them gentle, and yet all of them brilliantly suited to survival. From lumbering sauropods, whose very shadows sheltered their young, to sharp-toothed predators, ferrying hatchlings in jaws, designed for killing dinosaurs, redefined care without ever building a crib. Some guarded from a distance, some nudged with snouts or guided with tails. Others sang into fog-thick forests using voices shaped by bone and breath, sending out the simplest message: I'm still here. Keep going. Herds shared the burden. Strangers made room. Some laid eggs in warm sediment and trusted the earth itself to do the rest. And a few let their young hatch alone, run alone, survive alone. No farewell, just a beginning. Yet in every case, something incredible happened. They lived, they adapted, they passed on the pulse. This journey through a world without nests shows us that parenting isn't about comfort. It's about intention. Not always warm, not always kind, but always necessary. So if you ever feel like the path forward is lonely, like you're starting without guidance or softness or even a map, remember this: you're not alone. Someone long ago cracked the shell and walked away so you could learn to run.